some of our initial calculations. It's about 1,900 square feet of roof area. You get about 600 gallons per 1,000 square feet of roof area. The filter loses, if it's maintained, and it needs to be maintained a couple times a year, you lose anywhere from 5 to 10% of that water. So what's happening is it starts to rain, and the majority of the leaves and the debris fall down through this pipe. As the interior, there's a screen inside, and it is a vertical screen like this. There's no basket. But as the water flows through there, and the water molecules are touching, the water falls automatically into that into this one, which goes into the tank. I had the debris line is actually on the other side. So sticks, debris go out that one, clean water falls into the inside. This is called a blind insert, and we'll sell these when systems are going to be winterized. In some of the early discussions, I think we might have said is this going to operate year round?
Yes, year round.
So your condition, there's really nothing that you need to do. The internal filter, really the cleaning of it, grab simple green, a soft bristle brush, throw it through there, do it on a day that it's not raining out. Sometimes we'll throw it in a dishwasher if one's around, but basically clean it up, get that gunk off of it, and it goes down. So worst case scenario, somebody forgets to do that for a long time, you're just capturing less water. More water is going out, so the debris is falling out the bottom. Clean your filter, and then you'll capture.
So it would be going outside then, right?
Yeah,
to the
primary storm. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's just going, and there's a leaching basin out here. So theoretically, that basin would get correct.
So sometimes I send these along because, like, during construction, sometimes it's going in and it's raining out. You can put it in then. If you ever needed to go inside of these tanks to do any maintenance, you could put it in there, drain the tanks down. You really shouldn't. What you're going to see. Okay, so water comes through here, and then we drive all the way down to the bottom of the tank, and there's a device called a smoothing inlet down there. And what it looks like this, but it's got a bottom on it, and what it does is basically directs the energy of the water down, and then it puts it back up. And that's adding oxygen into your tank. And more than that, it's keeping basically a biofilm that grows on the bottom of the tank from resuspending. If you just put a pipe into the top of the tank, every time it rains, it would just make things turbid. So we've got the smoothing inlet. When the tank is up to this level, we've got a 90-degree elbow in here, and it basically skims the debris off the surface. On the pump inlet side is a device called a floating filter, and that is basically a 1,200 micron screen. It keeps messy parts that may have fallen down in there from going into the pump. No maintenance. I wouldn't imagine you would ever have to maintain that. If you ever shut it down, it wouldn't hurt to take a look, but it would take a little skinny guy to get down in that tank. So his guys did that. So that's really kind of the passive part, and we call it the VC four-step system. So VC is the German manufacturer. We're the North American distributor of this from Canada to South America. There's a reason that we use those filters. They just work fantastically. So I made so what you guys are going to get, I've resent this, which is basically operation maintenance manual. Whole lot of pages. There's one page in there that is going to summarize what I'm talking about today. It's a one-page sheet. It tells you what the maintenance is on a yearly basis. We've got that, and then there will be a startup report just basically documenting everything that we went through today. That I'll send that out to these guys at the end of the day. All right, so tanks are tied together. They're basically, he's got isolation valves in there so that, if you were working on one of the tanks, you could isolate, suck water out of one or the other. But they basically fill at the same level. Water gets up to here and we overflow.
And I have a main, so if you were to drain them down, that's this third valve on the water heater. So you can drain them all down into that floor drain that you're basically standing on top
of. There is a ball valve there as well that is basically the suction side of this pump. There is a strainer out in front of that. So I would say, like, within a couple months, it might not be a bad idea to isolate that, shut that valve off, take that screen out, just because, stuff gets down in the tank when it's being built. Generally, I would say, once a year, you'll probably only need to clean that filter. It's really more of a pump protection. It's almost redundant pump protection.
All right.
Inside of the tank, there are really two sensors. One level sensor. So the orange line here is a level sensor. It's not tied to any critical operations. It's an analog 4 to 20 milliamp signal. It lays about 4 inches off the bottom, and it reads out on our main screen right here as a full, basically this blue line changes as water goes down. I had it set at 5 feet, and it was showing like a little gap up there, but the tanks are full, so I put it down to 4. So you can change that by going to setup and changing that there. So I'll do it just so you can see it. So you see it just come, so it's just relative, it's a scaled value. So nothing is critical off of that. The low level float, so there is a float switch, a regular, SJ rhombus float switch that's about 6 inches off the bottom. Rainwater is present right now. That float is up, it's energized, it's green. We have power to the pump's ready to run, it's green. We are powering the domestic valve closed when there's rainwater present. So that float is up, it's closing that valve, powering it closed, because it's normally open, fail, open. When we run out of rainwater, float goes down, valve opens.
Awesome. So it's seamless, nothing that we have to switch over.
No.
Yeah, it's nice.
And there's a wiring diagram. We usually ship one inside here. I didn't see it, but that's all inside of here. It's terminal 15 and 9. And we took that out and tested it, basically pulled it, valve opens. So it's, everything's up and running. Operationally here, the start button's important. We learned that this morning. We were like, all right, what's going on? Something's up. And in auto mode. So you basically are always in start, auto. All you have to do is dust this thing off. You don't really need to do anything here. I've set the clock. There's really not a whole lot of different things. You can go into manual mode. I would say this, if you go into manual, just be careful, make sure that the pump is unplugged, because when you're in manual mode, you're overriding the program in here. So if there wasn't water in the tank, you could run that dry. These pumps are pretty special pumps, because they have a sensor inside of them, which is basically a small pressure tank. So there's a sensor and also a little variable drive. So right now you guys flush most of the toilets at once. The pump basically comes on, senses that pressure drop, runs until it satisfies, and then when everything's shut and Trent's plumbing is not leaking, pump goes to sleep. So we did that multiple times this morning. So
that almost sounded like a dig.
No, these guys did it great. Just getting everything in here. This was piece of plumbing art. So
I would have liked about twice as much space.
So just keeping this one relatively simple. What you're looking at is just pressure differential on these two gauges. So everything's to sleep right now. We were ramping up to about 60. If you're finding that you don't have enough pressure on the toilets, there's basically an up and down arrow where you can adjust pressure on that pump. I mean, you can also get a Bluetooth and actually wire into this thing, and but really no need. Once you're up and running, it shouldn't be an issue. So we sense water drop back there. Do you want to go flush a couple toilets? Sense the water drop. Water comes through here. There's a flow meter here. It's going to show gallons per minute, and then also a total gallons used. You just have to push a button, and then there's a resettable piece in there. There's a manual in there, and it's my partner. I had to look at it. He just texted me it, so this was kind of added at the end. We can put fancier things inside of the controls, but this is, you can see it reading 5-6 gallons per minute. He's flushing toilet, pumps ramping up, running.
You can see the gauge bouncing back up.
So, you're really looking when it's running. If you've got like a 20 psi drop, then it's time to change these filters. So coming through here, this is a sediment filter, a 5-micron sediment filter. That's doing is, making it very clear so that the ultraviolet light will work. Sediment, 5 microns, pretty tight, but to get UV to work, which is what's required in most codes, you have to go down that far. This is a carbon filter, which improves the taste for your dog when he's drinking out of the toilet bowl. But like I said, so carbon, ultraviolet light.
And the filter wrench is up there.
Yeah, and I'll go through that a little bit.
So can I just butt in here?
Yeah,
you
you bet.
talked about the little meter there. That was done at my request.
Yep.
Because we want to be able to keep track of how much water we're saving, right? If we're trying to justify this thing, or even just interpret what we're doing, it's going to be great to say we save 20,000 gallons a year. I mean, I have no idea what it's going to be, but you're saying that right now is just, it has a continuous, it'll just keep going unless we reset it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So you just read that off, and then if you reset it, in the manual, I'll go through kind of what's in there, but there's a spot that you can record. Like whoever's doing the maintenance, there's a table that says, I changed that, I changed these, and then this is on a 365-day timer. So we started it today, and now it's going to just be counting backwards. It's an annual change. I hadn't worked with one of these units in a while, and there are YouTube videos. If you YouTube IHS unit, they'll show you exactly what to do. But you would shut off the pump, isolate the pump, shut that down, shut this, and then there's a pressure relief valve up here. So you basically relieve the pressure off of the system. Use this. I just have to look at it upside down, lefty-loosey. Pull this, drops out, put in a new filter, The quartz, the UV light is, so there's a light bulb, a long skinny light bulb, and there's really only one way for it to go in. You plug it in, and you have to rotate something. It's only one way that it will go in. Very easy to replace. What you might see is there's a quartz sleeve inside of there, which is keeping the electricity away from the water. Over time, and even in the first operation, as we get the junk moving through it, that will get dirty. If you get an alarm, like 99% of the time, it's the quartz sleeve. So when you're doing your annual maintenance on the UV light, you're basically breaking a little gasket on the bottom on that quartz sleeve. Pull that out. You can clean it with CLR. Just make it clear, and that goes back in. The control unit is actually reading, ultraviolet intensity of that light. And so if it's not getting through and killing the bacteria, it'll basically tell you and go into alarm.
So you don't have to replace the whole unit there. It's just the
light.
internal.
Yeah. What I like to do is get people with an additional quartz sleeve and an additional light to have it on site for guys like me that drop things. And just so you've got one on standby, so you can be cleaning one and then have another light that's ready for the next year. So we can help you out with that. Get you those parts and pieces. So from there, you know, our pump is plugged in. We're running on pressure drop. You have to have an annual change, as you mentioned on the RPC. This is just making sure that our rainwater doesn't contaminate the domestic supply. I would encourage you to test this water and test it against if you have a science project or a science student that wants to look at it, test this water against City of Grand Rapids. And what you're going to find is water coming from the heavens has got very, very little dissolved anything in it, very low dissolved solids. You know, if you're, you know, Michigan is all groundwater supply, so, you know, you could see 400 to 800 parts per million. If you measured that rainwater with the total dissolved solids meter right now, you'd read like 40. So it's actually it's a fantastic source to use. And once he shuts off the video, I'll tell you the real story. Sorry. But, yeah, so really just kind of leaving this alone. Pumps enabled, domestic valves powered closed, and low level float. That pump also has secondary dry run protection. So sometimes people won't even ask for domestic backup on just like a little irrigation system, but that pump will protect itself when water's not present, but the float's high enough that it should switch over before there are any issues there. So this pump I personally have had in my house for 20 years. That actually was the pump prior to that, but you know, they're a little bit smarter now. So there's you know, Bluetooth app you can wire into it, and yeah.
So that alarm on the box that would go off
basically for the pump or for the UV light.
Okay, that one right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shutting it down. I mean, if you were to winterize it, you're basically shutting power off to this, draining pressure off. If you ever winterized it, you know, 32 degrees is 32 degrees. So power goes down. You know, tanks like this, we say, you know, get a little bottom suction pump so that you can actually get all the water out, and then you can put your blind insert back in.
And these should be empty too
if you were going to winterize it,
which you would do.
But use it year round. You know, these are the kind of the most important manuals here. The UV light, it's page 8. It basically will tell you exactly how to run through it. Great YouTube videos. Veek was a Canadian company, but we use their stuff a lot. It really is pretty straightforward in terms of troubleshooting. That's the vortex filter, and that's the scalar pump. Those are also in the digital format of what I've sent to Trent today, so you guys will be receiving a copy of this. I'll just kind of run through it so you know what's in here. I do recommend, you know, even though it's big, print it all out, throw it in a 3-ring binder, attach it to here. And if you have questions, you're all going to get my card. If you have electronic questions, the guy James and Jeff, who are our programmers who did this, call there and ask for James and Jeff. So they're the ones, they program it. We build the controllers in-house. So I was on the phone with him today, and he basically walks me through any electronic issues, of which we had none today. UL listed, if your inspectors are still coming, it's a UL listed box. Our full treatment systems, not this one, but the next scale up commercial, are now fully UL 979 listed. That took a little bit of doing. So this is a full manual, talks about that 4-step process. You know, what to put in the system, what not to put in the system, green roofs, gray water. We do those systems, but we set them up differently. It's actually got pictures of the screenshots right off of the filter, the flow screen, setup screen. There's not a flow screen on there. And then just that maintenance summary. That's kind of the main thing. All of the system schematics, the controller wiring diagrams are in here. The pre-startup paperwork that I made Trent fill out and send me pictures, and then that actual startup paperwork, which I'll send to them at the end of the day today. Kind of generalized startup and shutdown procedures, and then this maintenance sample and maintenance log. So it's not perfect, but it's, whoever's going to take over and be taking care of the system, they can start their kind of logging the information. So a 4-step process, what it is, kind of explains what I did there. Screenshots of what we've got in there, the scale of pump, that domestic valve,